Welcome to Coffee and Popcorn, where we bring you the most striking stories from around the world. What on earth do you do when you walk in on your fiancé and your dad doing the unthinkable? What goes down in today's story is almost unbelievable.
I'm 27, my fiancée Laura is 26, and my father's 52. Like a lot of people who've had something like this happen in their relationship, I never thought it'd happen to me, but here we are. I met Laura during her freshman year of college. Our dorms were in the same building, which is where we eventually met. We later found out that we lived 2 towns away from each other, so whenever we went home, I let her drive with me. It only added 20 minutes to my journey, so it wasn't a big deal. After multiple trips and hanging out at school, we started dating. I have a close-knit family, and so did she, so we told our families right away. I often met her family when dropping her off, but it was nothing more than an introduction and exchanging pleasantries. Both of our families accepted each other with open arms, and our relationship grew from there. I was a year ahead of her, so when I graduated, I went home. I was offered a good job with great pay, and I visited her at school whenever I got the chance. And whenever she came home, we made time for each other. After she graduated, she moved in with me, and after living together for about 3 years, I proposed. We've been planning our wedding ever since. Looking back, there were loads of things I overlooked, but I just wrote them off, thinking that my father was just welcoming Laura into the family. My father would call her all the time, and if I was around, they'd tell me that they were talking about an upcoming family party or something. One time, Laura was in the shower and her phone rang. I saw that it was my dad, so I answered. When he realized it was me, he sounded upset and surprised that I picked up the phone. He said that he wanted to talk to Laura about my mother's birthday, which was coming up in a week. The call didn't last very long, maybe a minute or 2. On the day I found out what was going on, it was like any other day. Laura had Thursdays off, so she made breakfast for us. When I set out for work, she gave me a kiss and told me to have a great day. During my drive to work, I realized that I forgot some paperwork that I needed for a 3 o'clock meeting. I shrugged it off and told myself that I'd go home at lunch to pick it up. Laura texted me throughout the day, talking about all the casual stuff that couples talk about. I didn't think it was necessary to tell her I was coming home for lunch. When I did get home, I noticed a car that looked like my father's in the parking lot, but I didn't think anything of it. I just parked the car and went into the building. When I opened the door, there was a trail of clothes leading to our bedroom, and the sound of faint moans echoed through the apartment. I stood at the door in utter shock. My brain was a mix of rage, sadness, and disgust. If you were a fly on the wall, you'd see what looked like a statue I couldn't move. When I finally snapped to, not knowing how much time had passed, I took out my phone and started recording. After filming for about a minute, I flipped on the lights so I could see who she was with. They both jumped up and looked at me. I couldn't believe it. My father was in bed with my fiancé. After the initial stun, he noticed that I was recording and he started to panic, trying to find anything to cover himself while telling me to stop filming. He found a towel, wrapped it around himself, and started walking towards me. I told him that if he didn't want to get hurt, he should stop coming to me. He either didn't care or didn't hear me and reached for my phone. I hit him square on the jaw, his head bounced off the door and he slumped to the ground. Laura shrieked. I aimed the camera at her and said, "Are you concerned about your shag buddy but have nothing to say to your fiancé?" My father woke up after about a minute. I told them that I just needed to pick up something for work, so I'll be heading back to the office. I also let them know that if they were still here when I got back, I'd send the video to everyone they knew. I ended the video and looked at my dad, who was still coming to, and said, "You're dead to me. You're no longer my father, but you might want to go home and talk to Mom because I'll be talking to her very soon." I sat in my car until one of my bosses called to ask where I was. I told her that I was on my way back. When I got back to the office to give her the paperwork, I must have looked awful because she started asking me what was wrong. I told her it was nothing and that I'd be okay. I could see her scanning me up and down. She noticed some blood on my collar. She rushed to me and said, "You're bleeding." I looked down and said it was my father's. She looked confused, so I pulled out my phone and showed her the video. She sat in silence until it finally clicked that my fiancé was cheating on me with my father. She asked if there was anything she could do, suggesting that I take some time off work, but I told her that I can't go back there right now. The meeting went over fine. I put on a smile for everyone like nothing had happened. My boss came up to me afterwards, wondering how I was able to get through it, but I just said I don't know and went to my office. When I got home that evening, I was alone for the first time in a very long time.
This is such a crazy story. I had a tough time believing it. I'm still not sure if I do, to be honest. But I'm like that with pretty much anything I see online. It's remarkable that someone could do such a thing to somebody they supposedly care about. In my opinion, even if you fall out of love with someone, you should respect them enough to not go behind their back and expose them to one of the most painful things ever. As for the dad, well, he should be ashamed. I'd even say he was more in the wrong than the fiancé. Maybe. Stories like this can give just about anyone trust issues. It seemed like OP didn't suspect anything was going on until the unfortunate incident. I can imagine that it'd be very hard for OP to trust any new partner in the future, and he'll probably be looking out for any and every sign of cheating that he can recognize. Honestly though, this is an unfortunate way to flush your relationship down the toilet, especially when it seemed as though OP and his fiancée had all the stars lined up for them. That said, there's more to this story, so let's see what happened next with OP, his fiancée, and his family.
Wow, I didn't expect to have this much support. I didn't really plan to update this story, I just wanted to share what happened to me and hopefully get some advice. After I published my story, I closed my computer and kind of fell into a depression. It hit me like a train. To everyone who thinks my story is fake, I wish I was this creative. I'd write books instead of working a 9-to-5. The day after I posted, I tried to get in contact with my mother, but none of my calls were connecting. I wanted to see if she'd get lunch with me so I could tell her everything. After about a dozen tries, I got into my car and went to the house. She needed to know what happened as soon as possible, even if talking about it was going to make it hurt all over again. During the drive, I thought about what I'd say to her and how I'd say it. It made me panic so much that I had to pull over twice to throw up. It's not every day you have to tell your mom that her husband's screwing your fiancé. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the car so I could calm down and gather my thoughts. I'd already been in the car for a few minutes when my mom threw open the front door. When I stepped out of the car, she started cursing at me, saying, "How dare you come home after hitting your father when he tried to break up a fight between you and Laura?" She called me every name in the book. She even called me an abuser. She told me that I needed to leave since Laura isn't ready to forgive me, and if she's smart, she never will. Apparently, my father took my fiancé to my family's home and told my mom that me and Laura were arguing, and when he tried to stop it, I hit him. She continued on for a while until I finally snapped and said, "Really, Mom? Because your husband's banging my fiancé, that's why I hit him. And if you can't take my word for it, I have a video. I'll send it to you. But because my own mother can talk to me like this, don't expect to see me again. I don't want to hear your apology when you finally figure out that you're a crappy mom, just like my piece of crap father." Her face dropped. I pulled out my phone and sent her the video. She pulled up the video and watched it until the part where I turned on the light. She then put her phone down and looked up at me, but I was already back in my car. I backed out of the driveway and looked at her one last time before I took off. She was in tears. My heart felt for her, but too much was said during that fight for me to go back and forgive her. When I got home, I started clearing everything out of my apartment that had anything to do with Laura or my family. I boxed up all of Laura's things and put them next to the front door. Legally, this has been her place of residence, so I can't really kick her out. Her name isn't on the lease, and she's the type of person to shy away from conflict. But if she comes here for any other reason than to pick up her things, there'll be plenty of conflict. Anything that had anything to do with my parents, I boxed up and put into storage. Like I said earlier, we were a very close family, but I've never had a problem cutting toxic people out of my life. I texted Laura's parents and told them I was calling off the engagement. I also told them that she's been cheating on me and thanked them for everything they did for me. Our relationship was still building, but they were very kind and supportive of me. So this just added more hurt to the mix. I finished by asking if they'd come by and pick up her things. I haven't got a response from them yet, but I'm hoping they come and grab her things so Laura doesn't have a reason to come back.
I'm still having a tough time believing this story, but if things unfolded the way OP described, it's completely heartbreaking. I do find it weird that OP's father tried to spin the story in such a way, especially when he knows OP caught some of his transgressions on camera. I also find it odd that his mum didn't call him before he turned up to the house, but maybe OP just left that part out. Still, I can't imagine what it'd be like to be in his mum's shoes. Having your world crumble around you like that isn't something I'd wish on anyone. But there's one last part to the story, so let's see what happened next.
I decided to get the ball rolling on everything that needed to be done, like getting tested, finding a therapist, moving home, and of course, buying a new bed. I started by calling my doctor's office, telling them that I needed to get tested and to refer me to a therapist. I had my first appointment with a therapist a few weeks ago, and we decided to continue them once a week. I also got tested last week, but it'll be another week or so until I get the results. Cross your fingers for me. I got in touch with a real estate agent friend of mine, and he sent me a ton of listings. I decided on a refurbished cabin on the outskirts of the city, and I finished moving 2 days ago. When I finished moving, I called Laura's parents. I told them that I'd moved out and that Laura still has to pick up her things. The landlord will start showing the apartment in a few days, so someone needs to do it. That must have lit a fire under their butts because the next day my former landlord texted me, thanking me for getting the apartment emptied. No one knows where I live now other than the friend who set me up with this place, so I know that Laura or my parents won't be dropping by. The only thing that sucks about this place is that I traded a 10-minute walk to work for a 45-minute drive. My phone's been blowing up with texts and calls from Laura, my parents, and some of my friends, but I have no interest in talking to anyone other than my therapist. At work, I've been a ghost. I go in, get my work done, and leave. On the rare occasion that I have to talk to someone, I put on my fake smile and pretend that everything's okay. My boss from my previous job has been trying to check in on me, but I don't really tell her anything. I just tell her that I appreciate it, and I'll be okay. But the truth is, I don't know if I'll be okay. I get that time heals all wounds, but I feel like that's only relevant when you're dealing with one issue, not when you lose the 3 closest people to you at once. A huge part of me has died, and there's no chance of resuscitating it. The meetings with my therapist are going well, I suppose. I've never done therapy before, so I don't have no frame of reference for what a good therapist is. We get along all right, though, and she seems genuine in wanting to help me. The first session was us getting to know each other and delving into what brought me to her. Nothing in depth, just me telling her what happened in my own words. The second session we had went a bit deeper as she asked me about my relationship with my parents. I told her that up until now it was great. We talked often, always communicated well when something was wrong, and that I grew up in a great home. But that all means nothing now. She asked me why I cut my mother out of my life, and I told her that she said things to me that I wouldn't say to someone I despise. I then told her there was no way she can come back from that. For now, I'm still miserable. I thought I'd be okay by now. Not necessarily happy, but okay. I know some of this is my fault, like not communicating with my friends, but when I think about responding to them, it just seems so exhausting. I know they'll want to get together or come to my new place, but I don't have the energy to be around them. Until I do, I'll work, go to my appointments, and sit on my back deck, sipping on some bottom-shelf whiskey. I haven't gone hunting since high school, so maybe I'll take that up again since I can hunt from my back porch.
This story read exactly like the Netflix show Obsession. If you guys haven't seen it, it's worth checking out. But let's continue. It seems like OP's still having a rough time with everything that happened. But who wouldn't be? Even though OP's struggling with this, if he keeps going, things will eventually get better, even though it doesn't seem like it right now. Anyone who's had their heart broken knows how tough it is to recover. Hell, if we're being honest, some people never truly get over being cheated on. They find it hard to trust anyone new that comes into their life, and some people even swear off relationships entirely. Let's see what our friends down in the comments section had to say.
Tiffany is a robot says, "My gosh, that has to be the worst way to find out your fiancé was cheating, let alone who she was cheating with. I'm so sorry you have to go through this. I'm sorry that your mom will have to go through something similar too. Make sure you and your mother lean on each other. Both will want to sway back and forth on the decisions that are best for you. But regardless of the outcome, you both need each other for support." I legit said, "Hell yeah," out loud when you clocked your dad. I'm not one to lean towards violence when it comes to conflict, but that was the least he deserved. I hope you give yourself time, patience, and stillness to make calm, rational decisions regarding this situation. Put your future and happiness above all else. Straight Goods says, "I'm going to say this. Don't be mad at your mother, she's a victim of this too. Unfortunately, your father lied to her to cover his tracks. If she heard from you before your father got to her, things would have been different. Your mother's going to need you just as you're going to need her, so take some time to cool down, then reach out to her." Special Parsnip says, "The only thing I would add is that your father is apparently a master manipulator. He fooled you right up until he didn't. Your mother's been with him for how much longer than you? She's been at his mercy for how long? She's had a lot more conditioning than you, and unless she has a well-established career and can walk out immediately, he's probably been financially abusing her for years as part of that conditioning. I don't think anyone here would have ever considered that he'd bring his mistress home and spin quite the tale he did. Not only did your father destroy your relationship, he also destroyed your relationship with him and your mother. Not to mention the future you thought you had. Take some time and think about the depth of deceit and treachery that this man was capable of. Your mom was operating under a conditioned manipulation by him. She's also a victim. I agree with others in that you two will eventually need each other. Take some time to cool off and reconsider rebuilding your relationship with your mom. I wouldn't put it past him to do harm to her, just so he can continue to live with your ex. He doesn't strike me as someone who'd be willing to give up a lot of his assets by going through a divorce either. Sparkle and Shine says, I'm so sorry for what those lying, cheating, betraying backstabbers did to you, OP. Just a word of caution. Don't send that video to anyone else. Not her parents, not her or your friends. No one. Don't post it online anywhere. You can, and likely will, be arrested and charged under revenge porn laws if you do. Based on the evil and malicious things your fiancé and father pulled against you thus far, I wouldn't be at all surprised if one or both of them went that route to change the narrative and mitigate the damage to themselves and their own reputations. Having you charged under revenge porn laws would be a way to do that. If you end up charged with that type of offense, it'll ruin your life more than they already have. Please don't make the mistake of thinking they wouldn't go that far. You never would have believed they'd perpetrate a double betrayal against you as heinous as they did, turn your mom against you and make you the bad guy. And yet, here you are. You need to protect yourself because this is going to get really nasty. They know you have the goods on them, and they have no way of turning what they did against you. That is, unless you give them the means to do it. When people are desperate and trying to save their own skin, you can't put anything past them.
I 100% agree with this last comment. Never, under any circumstances, share any intimate videos you have of your partner. While you might get caught up in your emotions after a breakup, getting a revenge porn charge levied against you isn't what you want. Despite OP's mum not having the best response to what happened, the general sentiment in the comments section is that she deserves another chance. But what do you guys think? If there are any more updates to this story, I'll try my best to keep you guys updated. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of Coffee and Popcorn, and I can't wait to see you on the next one.